What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Guilty as Charged podcast, coming to you live on a Saturday morning. Here today to talk about some latest news from OTAs about Mr. JC Jackson. It was a fun day on Twitter yesterday. And then we'll get to, our tiering of the Chargers defensive players as well. So excited for today's show. We don't get to talk about a ton of super relevant news at this time of year. So today we will get to. Tyler, what's up, man? How are you doing this morning?
Doing very well. And for all the haters, yes, I did pay $5 for this Starbucks drink. Sorry, I didn't make my own, but you have this much time to work with. So Starbucks ordered, left the gym, grabbed the Starbucks, came here. I'm here. Here we are.
Yeah, nice. Starbucks is expensive now, but it does the trick. Do you still do the vanilla sweet cream cold brew?
That is correct.
That's your go-to one, right?
It
so
is.
I like their brown sugar shaken espresso now. That's like my go-to. So you should kind of taste like after you eat cinnamon toast crunch, like the milk that you drink, that's what the drink tastes like.
Yeah, that's probably one I should have started with, because when I first started drinking coffee, it's like, what is the sweetest, sugariest thing I could possibly get? So I've kind of settled in the middle with a sweet cream cold brew.
Yeah, no, that's a solid one for sure. So yeah, if you're joining us, if you're with us live, I guess let us know what your favorite Starbucks drink is. And Eamon Hugh says he's a proud pink drink man. All right, there we go.
I've had it, dude.
Yeah. Add cinnamon to the brown sugar drink. That sounds like too much to me.
I grew up on like cinnamon and brown sugar toast with some butter.
Dude, same.
Yeah, we shared way too many similarities.
Just a few of them. I mean, your cousin's name is Bowman. My wife's maiden name is Bowman. Just with yours has a W and mine does not. So that's fun.
I need to double check that I'm actually not just 100% white. If that's the case, then we're related.
Yeah, distantly, obviously. So yeah, it should be. Oh, I guess your dad likes the pink drink.
So there was like a TikTok or some sort of thing where wives would ask their husbands to order a pinkity drinkity for them at like a Starbucks. Totally fake drink. So the guys would get frustrated or whatever. So my dad, fully believing in my mom, ordered a pinkity drinkity. And they're like, we don't have that. And he's like, no, it's a pinkity drinkity. Yeah, he fell for it, I guess.
That's a good one. Sometimes TikTok can have some good trends. That's a fun one. Your dad. All right, so we got the whole Shroon family in the chat today. I love it. Yeah. So yeah, we're gonna start today's show obviously by talking about the JC Jackson news. Tyler has his video that he kind of edited all the clips together as well. I don't know if you want to put that on the screen now, but
sure.
JC Jackson back at practice for the first time yesterday. For our audio audience, Tyler just made a compilation of everything that's happened with his recovery. He's only I think it's 6 months or 7 months removed from official surgery of rupturing his patella tendon. Yesterday, back at practice doing position drills. Tyler, I went through the same injury. Like, this is crazy to me that he's back at practice already. What are your thoughts as you see? And we didn't nobody knew this was coming. It just randomly the Chargers tweeted the video out. Nobody knew that he was going to be practicing this week. What are your thoughts here as we watch the video again of JC Jackson practicing?
I mean, unbelievable, inspiring. What can I say about this? It's incredible. Now, I'm not saying that the guy we're seeing here is 100%. I'm not going to sit here and say that this guy's going to go start in week 1. I'm not going to say that, but I mean, this dude's been pretty adamant all offseason that he's going to be out there, and at minimum, he's picking off Mac Jones, but he wants to be out there week 1. And I'm not going to tell him that he's not going to be out there. I mean, this is, I believe, January, this first video here where he can't even go on a bike. I mean, barely moving in January. And we fast forward and suddenly, okay, he's, jogging lightly on the treadmill, but then he's adding weight to it. And then just getting to this last video where he is on a practice field running and cutting and trying to do, break down and such. It's so impressive. It's unbelievable, the recovery so far. I don't know, how much this is in line with, typical recovery from this injury or whatnot. Obviously, most people aren't a multi-million-dollar athlete playing at the highest level in the NFL with NFL doctors and trainers, etc. But I mean, this is beyond impressive. It's amazing that he's accomplished this so far.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'm not going to sit here and say that he's going to come back 100% and be better than ever. Realistically, he's not going to be as good as he ever was. But man, like, it's just so inspiring to watch him progress through this to where he was at yesterday. I'm really happy for him, as everyone's saying in the chat. Like, I'm happy for him. And it really does seem like he has this mentality, this drive it's infectious. It's inspiring. Him to be able to do this it's incredible. It seems like a medical miracle. And the Chargers, again, for whatever reason, they've recovered so much faster from their injuries. Granted, I'd love for them not to happen.
Yeah.
But Joey coming back from, his groin ripping off his bone in 2 parts. Rashawn with his bicep injury was going to play in the postseason. JC coming back this fast. Can't stay healthy to begin with, but sure, they can recover really quick. So it's impressive and good for him, honestly.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like obviously I was not a professional athlete when I ruptured my patella tendon. I was a high school athlete, so a little bit different. That was also in 2011, not 2023.
Mm-hmm.
So very different circumstances, right? But like, I've been through that recovery. It can get very, very grueling, very discouraging at times, because you just never know. Like, you might have a random bad day in there just because the tendon's not, recovering a certain way. So we also have another player on the team with the same injury, and he hasn't even started running yet. That person being Otito Ogbonia. So Austin Johnson's was not the patella tendon, right? He was like MCL or something like that.
I can double check. Who was the dislocated knee? Was that also JC?
I think that was JC. Regardless, right? Like, JC is so far ahead of schedule at this point to be doing position drills is insane. And so it just kind of shows, like you're saying, the mentality that he has to be able to recover from this kind of injury right away. And we're still a few weeks away, obviously, from training camp. I think we're officially 7 weeks out. So I would imagine that we get to training camp and they're still kind of easing him back into things. But I've been kind of, I don't want to say pessimistic, more so probably somewhere in between pessimistic and realistic about his recovery, because I know what that injury is like. Okay, Austin Johnson tore his ACL. That's what Brandon Arias says in the chat. So yeah, it is. I've been skeptical that he'd be able to be ready for the first game. I've been kind of targeting maybe like after the bye week in my head of like when he could realistically be back, and that might still be happening, right?
Right.
But with how far ahead of schedule he is, like, there's a good chance that he's ready for week 1. Like you're saying, probably not the same player that we saw in New England. It's going to take him some time to get his football legs back under him.
Mm-hmm.
But this is incredible news. Like, this, if he's healthy and ready to play for the season, like, this is game-changing news for the Chargers secondary, right? Because this takes one of the most talented corners, on the team, and either Asante or, we'll see kind of what happens there. But, Asante Samuel Jr. can be a role player for them as opposed to a starter. Jasir Taylor can be a role player instead of a starter. So it just gives them so much more flexibility if JC Jackson is ready to rock. And it, comeback player of the year, he's not even on the odds, but like, if he comes back and he, if he leads the league in interceptions or something like that, like, there's so much potential for a great story here. I'm not going to put that kind of pressure on him by any means, but
yeah,
it's incredible to see. We were talking about this in the Discord yesterday, and somebody pointed out, it could have been very easy for JC to have gone to negative place here. He signs this big contract. His first few games are not super good, coming off of a random foot surgery. Then he ruptures his patella tendon once he's finally getting into the swing of things. And so it could have been very easy for him to just be like, hey, you know what? Like, I'm just going to kind of mill it in here and milk this recovery for longer and just kind of take my time here. But he's come after it. He's ready to rock. He's attacking this recovery with such a great intensity, and you just really love to see it.
Yeah, it's tough because I know a lot of fans were so frustrated with him last season. It just felt like the season from hell for him, honestly. Like,
Yeah.
what are the odds this thing in your foot's going to be a problem that needs to be fixed? You can blame him, you can blame the team, you can blame whoever. It is what it is. And then to get rushed back and try to play against the Chiefs, and it doesn't look good, but he has to play all the snaps, then he's out, then he comes back, actually plays really well against Seattle, then gets hurt in a horrific way where he probably could have picked off that ball, and instead it ends up being a season-ending injury and a touchdown. It was kind of the season from hell, but whatever you think of JC or whatever you thought of JC last year, just look at the video, look at what he's doing. And as people are saying, all in Chargers gear, it's inspiring. And again, whatever you thought of him last year, you really see that this guy he could have taken the money and run. This could have been over. He could be a problem that the Chargers are already trying to trade or cut or whatever because he just quit. It's over. And really, his career might never be the same. But we're going to find out. I mean, he's working hard to find out what he's going to be when he comes back rather than just coast. I mean, I think we've all been there for like Jared Gaither, who kind of just got his contract and then just kind of loafed around, and that was it. Now, again, I'm not saying JC's going to come back and be excellent. I hope he is, but it's not going to be for lack of effort and lack of trying. We've seen Donald Butler get his big contract and then just, and that was it. And it was over. And that happens a lot. And again, JC might not be great. He may never be worth that contract, but it is still inspiring to see him try to earn it as much as he can. I mean, like you said, Otito isn't out there right now, and yet we have JC running in a helmet in practice. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's honestly like I keep referring back to my own experience, and like it is some dark times of recovering because you have to reteach yourself how to do everything with your knee when you rupture your patella tendon. It's it's just so cool to see him come back with this kind of mentality and going on NFL Game Day or NFL Network, excuse me, and saying that he's going to be ready for week one and he's going to pick off Mac Jones in the game against the Patriots. Granted, that's much later in the season, but he's speaking these things into existence. And then he's coming out here and doing it. Like, he was on NFL Network before he was even practicing. I think he had like barely started running. And he was like, I'm going to be back for week one. So his mentality is so refreshing. We don't hear athletes talk about, that kind of stuff when they're in recovery mode too often. So I'm excited, man. This is going to be a great storyline to watch at training camp. We'll see how much he actually gets to do. But, you talked about this last season. He was legitimately the best player on defense in training camp last year. Easily. And he is somebody who, if he's right, can change this Chargers defense and like change how we think about the secondary too, because at this time last year, we were all concerned about Michael Davis. And we were like trying to figure out where Asante Samuel would play, who's going to get these reps. And this year, if we know that JC is ready, Michael Davis is coming off the best season of his career. Asante Samuel Jr. is finished the season so strongly. Like, the potential for this cornerback group is so high if JC is right. And I think that, yes, it's June 10th, but I think Chargers fans should be legitimately excited about the potential of the secondary group with this news in mind that JC has a legit chance to be ready for week one.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's not really a question from M. Woe here, but he's talking about how the Chargers managed JC's health pretty poorly last season. Where do you think they're leaning this year? Because there is so much pressure for this team to win this year. They don't. Everybody's gone. It's that simple. So, last year you have a lot of surprises in the medical department. Was that the year that Kenneth Murray was injured? Yeah, he's injured in week 18 or whatever. Had surgery. No, didn't have surgery because they thought he'd come back no problem. Yeah. And then he had to have late surgery. JC's issue that they didn't figure out or whatever. Came back too soon, got hurt. Mike Williams' injury, obviously. You can kind of argue Justin Herbert's, although Keenan's. So what do you think the Chargers would do this year? Like, let's say JC is going to be 80% week one or 85, whatever. Playable, but not 100%. Where do you think the Chargers lean this year in terms of getting him out there? Because, it makes sense to let him have the bye, but at the same time, we've seen this team push players out there because of the need to win and win now. What do you think they do with him?
Yeah, so Asma pointing out, they did fire their head trainer. They didn't fire all of their trainers, so there's been that confusion that we've talked about. They still have trainers, they just don't have a head trainer right now. So they've shown a commitment to make some changes in that regard. I think Brandon Staley's intention is always to lean on the medical staff and lean on the way players are feeling. He talked about it with Justin Herbert, and nobody knows their bodies better than these players. And so if Justin felt like he could play through that, then they were going to trust him as long as he could be, medically cleared. So I think they should be willing to take it slow with JC. And I think we've seen that, with that trend with Brandon Staley. Like, he's going to manage reps in training camp. He's not going to force these players to, go 100% every single day. I think that's just kind of the nature of the NFL these days. So I think they'll be more cautious with him. I think they would probably admit this too, that they learned a valuable lesson last year, not trying to rush these players back just because re-injury rates can be so high with these lower leg injuries. And so I think they learned a lesson. At least I'm hopeful that they learned a lesson, that they're not going to rush these guys back when there's not anything to maybe make them think that they were ready to be back too soon.
Yeah, I would agree. Next question, just out of curiosity, because it wasn't like this for the first half of training camp last year. Is there a camp competition for outside corner, or is this JC? Assuming he's healthy, is this JC all the way?
I think if JC's healthy, he's one of the guys. I think he's one of the spots. I think the competition would then be Davis and Asante Samuel Jr. outside, and then Asante and Jasir on the inside. Daniel Popper pointed this out, that Asante has played a lot of outside so far in OTAs. That Jasir Taylor has been mostly the slot guy, but that's operating without JC Jackson. So I think JC, if he's healthy, his spot is safe. I think they invested too much money in him. Like, they've got to get him right long term as well, because they still have 4 years left on the contract, right? Like, this is not something that can just go away. They can make it work next year if they feel like they need to move on. But he's Brandon Staley's guy. Like, he was the one that Brandon Staley advocated most for that year. So I think they got to make sure that JC is right. And if he is, he's going to be a starter. And so Davis, who's a free agent next year, Asante still on a rookie contract, Jasir Taylor still on a rookie contract. Those three will compete for the 2 spots.
Yeah. And then this is totally off the top of my head. So Jack Foley asks, if the year goes horrible for JC, can we get out this offseason without a ton of dead cap? Is he the one where, as like a post June 1st cut, it's significantly better for the Chargers?
Yeah. So I'm just pulling his contract up just so I can get it right. So pre-June 1st, you don't make that cut at all. You would take on a dead cap hit of $15 million and only save $4 million. If you do it as a post-June 1st cut, it's the opposite. So you take on $5 million of dead cap and you save $14 million basically each of the next 3 years. You would have a $5 million dead cap hit and $14 million in savings if you post-June cut him next year. So there's a world, right, where they do at least consider moving on. But I think that if he's healthy, he's gonna make them essentially keep him around, because if this coaching staff is still here, obviously, like, they have to get JC Jackson right. Like, they just have to, because that's one of the biggest moves of their tenure here. So as long as JC Jackson is like showing flashes of his previous self, I think he's probably safe. But if it's just like a disaster, then I think they could consider doing a post June 1 cut, especially if there's a coaching change.
And Michael Davis is a free agent next year.
Yes.
Hope it works out.
Yeah. So that's a topic for next year. I'm already thinking of like, okay, how are they gonna clear these $60 million? Really, like $70 million to at least be able to operate. But that's a topic for later on, probably next winter. So all right, Tyler, any other thoughts here about JC Jackson's return to practice?
Nope, just keep going, man.
Yes, I agree. All right, let's get to the tiers. Again, we did this with the offensive players. on Thursday night. So hopefully you guys stay tuned in for that one. If you missed it, you can go and check that out. Oh, wow, we're at the bottom now. Okay. I didn't know we could do that. Okay, Tyler, where do you want to start with the defensive players? I guess I should say before we get started, if anybody missed it, the tiers here, we have our all-pro, Pro Bowl contender, quality starter, average starter with upside, average starter, role player / backup, and then roster bubble. So last on Thursday, we started with Rashawn Slater. So where do you want to start today, Tyler?
Let's start with another player who didn't finish this. Well, he finished the season, but barely. Almost a season-ending injury. Joey Bosa, another player who, we talked about before. I think we even last year had him at All-Pro level. Mm-hmm. But clearly that injury was awful for his quote-unquote stock, I guess, in the eyes of fans, in the league, etc. And so many other good edge rushers are starting to show up. And I think Joey's kind of fallen in that not all pro tier, to be completely honest. And, there was a world where, okay, you have Khalil Mack. We're going to do this. It's going to be his best season. And that could definitely happen this year. But now, kind of like with the entire Chargers team, I need to see it. You got to do it. Whatever it is. And to a certain extent, even beyond the per play stats, Joey's always going to be, top 10-ish in that range on, win rate, run stop rate, productivity, etc. But can he get 16 sacks? Can he have 80, 90 pressures like some of these guys are having? I mean, Max Crosby had 108 2 years ago. I mean, can he get anywhere near that? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. I'm really hoping he does. So to me, Joey Bosa falls out of All Pro from last year and into Pro Bowl contender. And frankly, until he ages up or he's just consistently hurt and we can't predict it, I think that's where he would fall for several years. Beyond quality starter, of course. I think he's more Pro Bowl contender.
Yeah, I think that's fair. There's a ton of edge rushers right now, and like All Pro and like the way they do awards are kind of annoying because there's outside linebacker and defensive end, and so like there's a good chance that Joey does end up as an All Pro. I don't want to recycle the same kind of takes as last year. Mm-hmm. But he's gonna have a guy opposite of him who can take a ton of pressure away from him for the first time since Melvin Ingram in 2019, when Melvin Ingram was still really good. So the last time we saw Joey Bosa healthy, just kind of revisit things. He was 7th in the league in total pressures with 69. He had 10 sacks. He had 9 additional quarterback hits. He led the league in strip sacks, which is really kind of his calling card, if you will. And then, like Tyler mentioned, the per play stats are really where Joey shines. He was 4th in win rate. He was tied with his brother for 8th in pass rush productivity, which is how many basically pressures and wins are you getting on a per play basis. The issue, like Tyler is talking about, is that there's so many guys now. These edge rushers are just everywhere. Obviously his brother, there's Myles Garrett, who's basically going to be a shoo-in for All Pro. There's TJ Watt, who should come back healthy this year. Max Crosby, there's Matthew Judon, who's I think led the league in sacks over the last 3 seasons, if I'm not mistaken. There's Von Miller should be healthy. There's all these guys that have been drafted recently. Aiden Hutchinson should presumably take a step forward. Kayvon Thibodeau. So I think All Pro is probably a stretch for him. Like there's a chance that he does end up as an All Pro if he has like the best season possible. But I do expect him to be a Pro Bowl contender for sure. I just think there's too many edge rushers nowadays that are also good. Yeah, I didn't even mention Micah Parsons, who might even be like the best edge rusher in the league. So
yeah,
there's so many good edge rushers. I have a hard time pegging him as an All Pro. Certainly could happen, but I think Pro Bowl contender is fair for him.
Yeah, I would agree.
So Khalil Mack did make the Pro Bowl last year. I think that the statistics really did not bear that out, honestly. I think he's still like a contender for the Pro Bowl. I don't think he was like a legit like Pro Bowl player. But yes, where do you end up on Khalil heading into 2023?
These guys almost depend on each other at this point this season, right? The ceiling of what they can do depends on each other. So if Joey Bosa is healthy, he's a Pro Bowl contender. Khalil Mack is a Pro Bowl contender if Joey's healthy. Without him last season, some great games, some okay ones. I don't know about making the Pro Bowl based on those stats, but if I'm looking ahead to this season, I would still consider him in the Pro Bowl contender category, only because what we saw with him and Joey Bosa for all of the 2.2 games to start the season, but like, what do you have, 4.5 sacks to start the year against the Raiders and the Chiefs, several run stops. I mean, he was beyond productive. He was outrageously productive to start the season. And then just things kind of wore off from there. But, no offense to them, but they had, Chris Rumpf was the other guy. And then it was sort of Kyle Van Noy, who really didn't come along until the final third of the season. And then he was awesome. But for the most part, Khalil Mack was by himself. Same story as Joey Bosa, occupying double teams, triple teams, etc. Being the focal point for all offenses. So I think he's still a Pro Bowl contender. And they're kind of tied to each other, though. I think they're both beyond quality starters as is. But together they should be Pro Bowl contenders.
I think that's fair. I think, him being the only guy really for like, what would that be, like 8 weeks of the season, you could tell like he was just, not the same kind of effectiveness without somebody, taking pressure off of him. So I think both of these guys could certainly put up, top tier numbers. I mean, Khalil Mack last season, excuse me as I hit my microphone, he ended up tied for 16th with Deotric Wise in pressures. He only had 56 pressures last year. 8 sacks, 5 quarterback hits. His win rate was pretty on par with what he was in 2020. Obviously in 2021 he had his foot surgery. But that's something too that, Give Smith talked about, is that at this time last year, Khalil Mack was not practicing. He was recovering from that foot injury still. And they really kind of had to ease him into training camp. So now he's healthy. He's been training all offseason with Coach Ed, and he's going to be in LA all summer long, working with Joey, working with Morgan Fox and everybody, right? So potentially we could be looking at more production from Khalil Mack just because he's going to be healthier, throughout the whole offseason. And then, like you mentioned, Joey Bosa does this thing where he kind of alternates healthy years. So theoretically, this should be a healthy year for both of them. Yeah. And we could see both of them, put up numbers that we haven't seen in some time. But you led this off, like we have to see it first. So I think having both of them in Pro Bowl contenders is fair. I think if both of them play the same amount of games, I would probably predict Joey to be more productive and have a better, like more solid case as a Pro Bowler. But, I definitely envision Khalil Mack getting votes, being an alternate if he stays healthy is kind of like the worst case scenario.
Yeah, I would agree. And even if these guys don't make the Pro Bowl or aren't Pro Bowl contenders, I will say, like, maybe specifically just Khalil Mack, his value does go beyond the stat sheet in the Pro Bowl. Like, there is something to the leadership of it. 100%. He seemed to rally guys last year and rally the defense. Hey, we're going to go out to dinners. We're going to bond. I'll pay for the dinners. We're going to go to Mastro's or whatever it was. Which, hey, that would make me work hard too. If someone wants to pay for my Mastro's dinner, hey man, I'll go take on Lane Johnson. No, I wouldn't do that. But even if it doesn't make it, their value goes beyond, just the stat sheet.
Yeah. I mean, Joey talked about it, he doesn't come to OTAs without Khalil being here already. So that's a major thing as well. We know how good he is in run defense. I know that like he wasn't necessarily super productive when it came to run defense, but he was one of the highest graded run defenders on PFF. He was just so solid on that opposite edge that he was always setting the line back there. If you really watch the film, you see a very quality run defender as well. All right, let's get to the rest of the edge rusher room here. Tuli is down there on the bottom right. Let's get Tuli on the board. When we did our rookie superlatives, I pegged Tuli as the most immediate impact. I'm very bullish on him this year. The Chargers and Gift Smith are very bullish on him this year, but where are you at? Where would you place him here?
Ooh.
We had Quentin and Josh Palmer both as average starters with upside from the receiver room. I feel like that's where I would place Tuli, but what about you? Where would you place him?
Yeah, this is interesting. For some reason I didn't think of him before this and where I would tier him. Because do we know that he's an average starter? But he's not a role. Okay, he's beyond role player backup. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, because he's gonna play a key role for them. Yeah,
absolutely. But is he an average starter? Like, what does an average starter entail? I do think, because I think they found something great here, I would agree that he's an average starter with upside, but I lean towards more that being the upside part than maybe the average starter part, just because we haven't seen it. And I think Quentin Johnston's role to make him an average starter is clearly, maybe more clearly defined in this offense because of Keenan and Mike. Like, there's a kind of an obvious role for Quentin Johnston here that can allow him to get touches or manufactured touches regardless. Tuli, I don't know. There is a role, but I don't know how much it's going to be. And does that make him an average starter? Like, is his role going to place him in the category like Quentin Johnston, where he can be an average starter with upside? I think he's an upside backup. I don't mind him an average starter with upside, but I hesitate more on the average starter part for now, especially because he's so young.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're talking about a 20-year-old player, which is crazy to me. So he's not technically like a starter, right? Because he is going to be edge 3. But we've talked about on this show previously, that the edge 3 plays a lot of snaps, and then if anything happens, like, he is going to be a starter. So I think having him in the average starter with upside category feels right to me, because like, he's going to play a lot for this team. Giff Smith talked about like the third down packages that they already have created with him in mind. So I think this feels right. Like, I think I would have put Kyle Van Noy in like the average starter range last year, and I think the Chargers can get more out of Tuli this year than they did Kyle Van Noy on the edge last year.
Ooh, okay, that's a fun one. I don't mind that. Probably more of like a 17 game look.
Also, that, yeah.
As
Kyle Van Noy, like, to his credit, right? Like, he was playing linebacker, like off-ball linebacker, all off season.
Yeah.
And then Joey gets hurt, and they're like, "Hey, you played edge before. Like, you want to go back and do that?" And it's like, well, I mean, do I really have a choice? Like, so to his credit, like, of course, it's going to take somebody like him, some time to ramp up with things. And then he also talked about he had a back injury in there as well. So Tuli's going to come in right away. I'm an edge rusher. I kick inside from time to time. I think they're going to design some like easier looks for him too, from stunts and things like that. So I would predict right now that we get, let me look at Kyle Van Noy's stats actually before I give a stronger prediction.
Yeah.
I stand by my take about like him really producing more than Van Noy did last year, but I want to make sure I'm like getting the right numbers here. Okay, so Kyle Van Noy had 30 pressures last year and 5 sacks. I think Tuli can hit. I think Tuli can hit the sacks. I don't know if he'll hit 30 pressures because Kyle Van Noy did,
he played a ton,
blitz and stuff like that. Played a ton. I don't know if he can hit 30 pressures, but I think he'll get at least. I'd say he gets 6 sacks.
Okay, nice. I'm cool with that. That's great for me. That's fine by me.
I think we can leave Chris Rumph where he's at.
I would agree. It feels, mean. You want to see him ascend a bit more, but while he did improve, I think, as a pass rusher, the run numbers are pretty bad. So,
and I think already was like historically bad last year.
Yeah, I think it's at like a 53% right now. And I think even they admit this is probably where he would be. They continually have, and again, like, this is a day 3 pick, so it's not like oh gosh, we invested a first rounder here. They've always tried to find somebody else to work as that third guy or compete with him. Now they go get Tuli. So I think even the Chargers admit he's in the role player backup spot, and that's fine, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, the chances of finding like a true starting edge in the 5th round, it's so difficult. So I think as long as Rumpf can kind of become like more of like an Isaac Rochelle type who can maybe be a starter in a pinch, I think the Chargers will be happy with that. He's got, and Gibbs Smith mentioned this too, like he's got to start converting his chances because
Yep.
he had, I feel like, one play a game where he could, get a tackle for loss, get a sack, and he would just miss out on that opportunity. So,
Mm-hmm.
he's like 70% of the way there on making his plays. He just has to, finish the job there. But yeah, I've never expected him to become like, a starting edge player for this team. I think like best
Mm-hmm.
case scenario for him has always been as like a quality edge 3. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
all right. Do we want to just do defensive line? Do you want to do linebackers next? Corners, Derwin? Where are you at next?
Ooh, let's do linebackers because that sounds like a hot mess. So let's do that. I'm gonna throw them on the board and then we can talk about it.
Okay. So Eric Kendricks, there's a lot of excitement about him, and I get it. Obviously, he's the only big addition externally this year for the Chargers. I would say I would put Eric in the quality starter range.
Yeah, I'd agree.
I think like best case scenario, he can maybe have a bit of a resurgence and maybe hit a Pro Bowl, but I think there is definitely some signs of a little decline over the last couple of years, but I still think that he can play some quality football and be a nice starter for them.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect spot for him. Pro Bowl is about voting, so hey, if he does well, great. But quality starter, I think, is perfectly fine, and that's great. I'll take a quality starter at linebacker.
Yeah, I think people are pegging him as like a very clear upgrade over Drew Tranquil. I don't know if I would go that far, honestly, but I do think that he's a slightly better player. So quality starter feels safe to me.
Yeah.
Kenneth Murray is
go
next
for it.
here.
I don't know. I don't know. You do it.
You're gonna make me be the bad guy. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. I guess it just comes down to like how much upside do we still think he has? There were still some flashes last year. Like the 49ers game was probably the best game of his career. He's had some interceptions that have been nice plays. I've been kind of pessimistic about the whole thing. I just don't think that he has like the instincts to really like become a above average linebacker. So for me, I would kind of leave him where he's at, honestly.
Yeah, he falls between C and D for me. I think role player backup, like he literally will not be that this season.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I would call him an average starter either at this point, as much as I'd love him to. We're all rooting for him, but it's been so inconsistent. Maybe it's play, maybe it's injuries, etc. So I'm fine leaving here at average starter, but I think he's more of a D plus, I think, on this tier. But he's not a role player at this point either.
Yeah, I think if they had brought Tranquil back and signed Kendricks, then obviously that you change where you're designating him. But there's a chance that Deion Henley surpasses him in the lineup and by season's end does become a starter. He's making some impact plays in OTAs. He's impressing the coaching staff with how he's handling the transition to the NFL. But we still have to see that. And I still think that they want to make sure they can at least give Kenneth Murray a chance to have one kind of final say in his career. So
yeah,
I think by pure definition of his role, he's a starter. But I think like if the room were maybe a little bit better, then we could move him down a tier. But you just don't know if any of these other guys are like legitimately cases to start over him from day one this year.
Yeah, I'd agree. So that puts Deion Henley at role player backup.
Yeah.
I don't think the other two linebackers are roster bubble guys, but they also don't see the field. So I don't know. Where do you feel about? I feel like these two guys are tied together. So I guess they're role players and backups, but they also don't play on defense.
Yeah, they're great special teams players. And I wish Neiman would have a chance because I feel like
me too,
have really liked what I've seen, and he's very athletic, and so I wish we could see more of him. But I think if we had like a special teams tier, that's where they would be. But they're gonna make the roster, so I think leaving them here makes sense to me.
Okay, that's fine.
So Jose brings this up, like let's say best case scenario for Deion Henley. When do you think they would start him over Kenneth Murray? Like what point in the season would you be like, okay, like let's make this change?
Yeah, the bye week is definitely a convenient, thing for us to say, okay, this is when the transition could happen. I think it's later in the season than that. I don't know. Because on the one hand, they're moving on from Kenneth Murray. They didn't pick up the 5th-year option. They've literally tried every year to find another linebacker to be that guy. But I don't know. Like Telesco's comments about Henley are like, yeah, he's going to play really good special teams for us to start, and maybe he can contribute on defense too. It's like, it doesn't sound like you want him out there as a true starter just yet. And I do feel like they feel much better about Kenneth Murray than they do Jerry Tillery. But in both cases, there's no way you could have picked up that 5th-year option. But I think they really do want Kenneth Murray to still work. So I don't know. I think it would be late in the season, or Kenneth Murray would have to get injured for this to happen. I don't know if Henley's replacing him early, by like week 5, for example, unless there's an injury.
Yeah, there's contract year for Kenneth Murray. We've seen players, come in with great mindsets in a contract year. We've seen him kind of attached at the hip of Eric Kendrick so far. Mm-hmm. So, maybe there's a chance that K9 just flips the switch this year. But Deion Henley seems like the exact linebacker that Brandon Staley wants to start with his defense. Mm-hmm. He can rush the passer, he can cover. Run defense is a bit of a concern in terms of his size, but it's just kind of, it almost feels like a matter of when, not if, with Deion becoming a starter. With Tillery, like they had a bye week right at the midway point of the season.
Right.
And so they had 7 weeks where he was kind of like a sub package rusher along with Morgan Fox. The two of them are kind of splitting that role. And then at the bye week, that's when they started to say like, oh yeah, like we're going to, give more snaps to Morgan Fox. Of course, injuries certainly played a part in all of that. But then the week after the bye came, and that's when they waived him. So the bye week might help Kenneth Murray this year have a bit of a longer leash than Tillery got. And like you said, I think they feel better about Murray's 2022 season than they did Tillery's 2021 season.
Yeah, I would say so. They've also, with the last couple of years, with someone like McKitty, with Palmer, they almost did it with JT Woods and then Spiller. There was really a point like midway through the season where those third rounders started getting some reps. Really kind of ignored the first half of the season. And then suddenly right around the bye, and partially because of injuries, Spiller starts to see some reps. The Kansas City games when JT Woods had the most snaps of the year. Although again, I think that might have been, because Adderley was healthy that game. I don't know. I just think that they're going to wait a good half of the year before Henley starts seeing the field. I think you'll see a couple of rushes because he can do that regardless of how he develops as a run-stopping linebacker. There's a lot they can do with him as a rusher. So I think like middle of the year, he's played a lot of special teams. Hopefully he looks good in that role. If he looks good, okay, we'll start transitioning towards getting him in on some plays. But then how long does that take to him to become a full starter? I don't know.
Right. So I think Henley maybe starts to play a little bit more. Maybe we see, because Chris Rumph, his rookie season, I feel like they would give him like 5 snaps a game, 10 snaps a game to like start the year. And then same kind of thing, like halfway through the season, they started almost out of necessity because Chenna missed some games, right? That they had to play him some more. So Deion, I think, probably plays like a decent amount early, and then we'll see kind of where he's at. But I think Murray's going to play, like he'll have a role. I don't think this is going to be like a flat out benching at some point. I still think that they would let him play at least somewhat. So I don't think he's ever going to be like truly like a 0 snap guy or healthy scratch or something like that. I think both of these guys would be playing by end of the season.
Do they make him play special teams?
No, because Deion and Amon and Neiman can do all that.
So I mean, like if Henley takes over.
Oh, if Henley becomes full-on starter, I don't know. Murray's never played special teams.
That's what I'm saying. So do we end up getting to? I guess you can't cut him mid-season. I guess you could. I'm just curious, like, okay, if that's your plan, what to switch week 10 or whatever around that time, what is the plan for Kenneth Murray at that point? If he's not playing special teams and you've already committed to Henley and you've basically said, yeah, we're moving on, do you just cut or trade him at that point? Like dial up the Colts and say, hey, Gus Bradley, how you doing? You remember Kenneth Murray? I don't know, because if he hasn't played special teams. I don't think he played special teams as a rookie. Did he?
No, because he was a full-on starter right away.
I'm going to double check how many special teams plays he's played.
I don't think very many. Yeah, NFL is lit pointing out Tranquil stayed playing on special teams even when he was a starter. That's very true.
Ain't a first rounder though.
Yes, that is correct. So I think they would keep him and just maybe like play him on first downs and let Henley be kind of the second, third down, fourth down linebacker. But maybe he kind of becomes like that. Remember when Denzel Perryman was like only playing on first downs?
Yeah.
Like Thomas Davis, I think, was like the guy. And was that Kazier's year? No, Kazier was still kind of a bench player. But
that was 2019?
Or maybe it was 2020 when I can't remember.
Well, 2020 is the year where Drew was going to be the starter. Then he played 2 snaps, and then suddenly Denzel had to become the starter. So
maybe it was 2019 then. Anyways, I think they would still find a role for Murray to play on defense, at least somewhat.
Okay, so Kenneth Murray played 99 special team snaps, about 21.5% in 2020. So, okay, he's played more special teams than I thought.
Yeah. Was that what unit was that on? Does it say?
No, I'm just looking at Pro Football Reference. And then did he play the following year on special teams? Am I just going to be wrong? Like he's been playing this whole time and I didn't know? No, because he played 1 snap on special teams in 2021. So he's played 99 his rookie year, 1 in 2021, and 22 last year. Look at that. So,
yeah, those were the snaps from this year were all punt return. And field goal block in 2020 had 81 snaps.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
So, he's not like taking on a huge role by any means. Okay, let's move on next. Let's do Sebastian Joseph Day in the defensive tackle room next.
Okay.
Because I feel like they're easy.
Throw some guys up here.
Is Sebastian Joseph Day even on there? Did I forget him?
There he is.
Okay, I was gonna say.
Oh yeah, we forgot Morgan Fox.
Yeah,
which is hilarious.
He should be on there though. He should be on there now though.
Oh. Nope.
You might have to exit and refresh, maybe, but that might
because we'll lose all this. Yeah, I ain't doing that again.
I promise Morgan Fox is on there. We'll pretend that we'll put him in the quality starter tier because I think that's where he's at.
I agree.
Sebastian Joseph Day, I don't think he's a Pro Bowler because he doesn't rush the passer. Like that's just too much of an ask. So I would say Fox and Joseph Day would each be a quality starter right now.
Yeah, I'd agree. I lean towards Fox having a stronger role and presence, but yeah, I think Sebastian Joseph Day is a quality starter.
Yeah. And so just imagine that Morgan Fox is right there next to him, I guess. Because you're not saying that Fox is a Pro Bowl contender, right?
No, because I don't even think. I mean, that'd be great. I don't even know if he'll have the snaps to do that.
Yeah. Okay, so Fox, quality starter and Fox. Thank you for the clarification there. That makes sense. Okay, Austin Johnson is the interesting one here for me. Coming off of his ACL injury, where would you place him? Again, doesn't really rush the passer, but he is a better pass rusher than Sebastian Joseph Day, I would say.
Yeah.
But he's older as well, coming off the injury. Where would you put Austin Johnson right now?
Yeah, assuming some good health and good fortune. I think, honestly, I know I said the last stream before or whatever, I think he was the best player, a defensive lineman that they had until he got hurt. So I actually consider him average starter with upside because I think that he can play both the run and the pass pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say average starter with upside. I don't think he's 2 tiers below Sebastian Joseph Day.
No, and I agree. I thought that he was better than Sebastian last year. So it's just the health status, right?
Yeah.
Like, the upside is that he gets back to his former self. But there is obviously some risk with his age and his injury. So average star with upside feels good for me for Austin Johnson.
Yeah.
Otito, it sucks because he was starting to really round into form before the injury. We have not seen him at all, do anything, any kind of running, any kind of cutting, any kind of like position work. So there's a chance that we don't see Otito at all this year. I think we probably just have to put him as a role player backup for now.
Yeah. And it was interesting because when I interviewed Fox, he was talking about how he wants to improve this year playing over the center. And I was like, oh, interesting. I'm curious what that entails.
I think he's probably envisioning, a world where Tuli comes in and he's kind of like rushing against the center on third downs, maybe.
Yeah, probably. I thought it was interesting. Anyway, yes, I think Otito is a role player / backup in this case, and I don't think anyone else is higher than him there. Although, like, if he's out for the season,
well, because if
they cut him and then bring him back, like basically, like what is?
So they probably start him on the PUP list, physically unable to perform list, and then move him to IR.
Yeah,
if he's not even ready. So, like, technically speaking, he's not on the roster, but I can't see them cutting him outright. They're gonna want to keep him around and let him recover and all that stuff. So for like purposes of this show, like we could put him on the roster bubble and then change that in parentheses /IR for Otito.
I think role. Well, all right. No, well, okay, fine.
Which sucks because he was playing so well before he got injured. It's unfortunate that he had the injury that he has, and we might not see him at all.
Yeah.
Matlock, I think we can be optimistic about, but he's definitely a backup. He's not going to play over Morgan Fox. 91 is Chris Hinton, and then Gerard Clark is there as well. So, with Otito's future uncertain, I still think Chris Hinton's the better player, but I think there's a chance that Gerard Clark does make the roster because he's a bit more of a run defender type than Chris Hinton is.
Yeah, that works for me. I forgot Nick Williams, by the way.
Yeah. So Nick Williams, that's the 97 in the Bears uniform there. I think role player backup. That's fair.
Yeah. Hope he plays well in his age 40 season or whatever he's at.
I think he's 35. I think he's gonna be 35 in the season. Let me look this up.
Right on.
Him and Chase Daniel are like best friends.
I guess that makes sense considering who broke the news.
Yeah. And I think they were only in Detroit for like a year too. Or they might have been in Chicago too. Okay, so he's 33 right now. He'll turn 34 during the season.
So he's young.
Yeah. Okay. I kind of want to save Derwin for last. So should we do corners?
Sure.
Okay. So obviously we talked about J.C. Jackson and his return. Asante Samuel Jr., Michael Davis are on here, Dean Leonard, obviously, and Jasir Taylor. Jaw's the one in the middle with no helmet on. Yep. That was really like the only picture that I could find and use that wasn't like Getty images all over the place. So let's start with Michael Davis, shall we? Where are you at with him?
Give me I'll be spicy. I say Pro Bowl contender. I think he's that good. I think he was that good last year. Now, Pro Bowl contender comes down to voting, but I think we talked about last time, is he top 8-ish in the league potentially? He played like it. And so it's a risk knowing that, he had a great year last year, but they didn't even think he'd be the starter. Previous season wasn't so great. Year before that was great. But I legitimately think like he plays like a Pro Bowl contender. He ain't winning it. He ain't making it. But I believe in this kid a lot.
Yeah. Just filtering the thing the right way. So he became like the true starter, obviously, after the bye week, after JC Jackson got injured. Obviously, there were some games early on in the season, but if you look at forced incompletion percentage, which I think is a great statistic to see really the impact the player is making on a game-to-game basis, and you filter it on Pro Football Focus from weeks 8 to 18, Michael Davis was tied for second in forced incompletion percentage. And we talked about this throughout the end of the season. James Bradbury was the only player ahead of him, and he was tied with Sauce Gardner, who was Defensive Rookie of the Year and had a historically good rookie season at corner. Mm-hmm. Over that same time frame, he had the most pass breakups. He had 11 pass breakups. The thing with Michael Davis becoming like a bona fide Pro Bowler is going to be the interceptions. He has to get more interceptions this year.
Yeah.
And I feel bad because like we didn't really start like talking about him this way until Pro Bowl voting had ended already. Because I feel like if he had been playing this way for the whole season, I think everybody would all voted for him. Mm-hmm. So contender feels right to me. In order for him to like truly be a bona fide Pro Bowler, he's got to get more interceptions, which we've seen him do in the past. He had I think 3 interceptions in 2020 before he earned his contract. It might have been 4, including the pick 6 on Tom Brady. So we just need to see him get his hands on the football more often. But mm-hmm. The impact is definitely there of a top tier corner. The PFF did top 32 cornerbacks in the league. He did not make it, which I think was a pretty bad omission in my opinion. There are not 30 corners better than Michael Davis right now.
No shot.
So we just need to see more interceptions and he can become like a legitimately like Pro Bowl player, but contender feels right. And he might be an alternate, but that still, I think, qualifies here.
Yeah, definitely. He, even just by him not being on the field, you could I feel like that puts him in Pro Bowl contender. Whether it's Jaguars game, disappears, epic collapse. I mean, and it kind of shows you how important he was and how good he is. Then things weren't working so great in some games. Suddenly you put in Michael Davis and the defense is elite again. It's kind of wild his impact last year when they really started to finally put him into the lineup. So I don't know where we had him last year. Probably like average starter with upside.
I think that's where we had him. Yeah,
that would make sense. Which I think that's not even bad either. But no, man, I believe in him and I hope he has an awesome year. He's feeling himself. Talked about how Tyreek Hill was just fast. You just got to put your hands on. I'm like, okay,
let's calm down on the Tyreek talk. But for those who missed it, he was on Terrell Owens' podcast, which I didn't know was a thing until yesterday, and said that quote. So the film community loves Michael Davis. The film community, I think Ted Nguyen is kind of the ringleader of the Michael Davis fan club. But he had such strong tape at the back half of the last season. Coverage numbers can be tricky, so there's a chance that the forced incompletion number does come down, but there's also a chance that the interception numbers go up. So I'm excited to see where he's at this year. I think him, you're probably looking at him as the best Chargers corner right now heading into the season with JC's injury and uncertainty. But I'm excited to see what Michael Davis has in store for this year. And he's another one. He's in a contract here. Like he's going to want to come out too and make sure that he gets paid because like right now, I think he's like corner 20 on the market. He has a good contract, but I would imagine he has to understand that this is his last chance at a big payday. He was an undrafted free agent. So, he's going to want to have a big year and get another big contract. So
yeah,
I'm excited for him to come out this year and prove that last year was not just kind of a lightning in the bottle situation.
I hope so, man. I hope so.
All right. You want to do Asante next?
Yes. So I don't know if the Chargers consider him a quality starter because apparently they don't like him on run defense. I would still put him in there though. Like I'm sorry, you can't get 3 interceptions in a game and be an average. Like he's almost like a quality starter with upside. It feels like. I know, they don't feel so great about him in run defense, but I just think what he does in coverage, the way he responds to adversity, I would put him here as a quality starter, because if he were out there for the Chargers week 1 as CB2, yeah, I do think he's a quality starter.
Yeah, and Liam asking a question about him. I do think that Asante's ceiling is a quality starter. HJ is the top 5 in the league. I can't get there. I think the run defense thing really messed with him when they started doing that rotation with him and Jod. You could tell he was just not playing the same kind of level. He's a great cover corner. He's got such good coverage instincts. His ball skills are fantastic. I mentioned this when rewatching the Rashawn Slater tape. I watched the last interception that he had in that game against Davante Adams. Like, that was an insane play when you look at where he came from. So coverage wise, like, he can be such a strong impact player, but the run defense is a big concern. And if you're putting him in the slot, like, that's going to be a bigger ask for him. So, there's a world where he's not even a starter on this team. Like, I think people just kind of assume if JC is healthy that Asante is going to be the slot starter. I don't know. Like, I think that he would become like a super role player for them in that instance, and just kind of be the defense's version of Josh Palmer. We're like, okay, you need me to fill in here, I'll fill in here, I'll fill in there. I'll be the 6 DB, I'll be the nickel corner and coverage in instances. But that's assuming a lot of things, right? You have to assume that JC Jackson comes back healthy, but I think that his ceiling is kind of quality starter. But for now, I'm comfortable with this because he is a starter.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying there is a chance that he's not really a starter.
Yep. Where would you, so we didn't really specify which. I'm assuming quality starter on the outside. Where would you put him if you were a slot guy?
If he were a slot guy, I would say average starter with upside.
Okay. That seems fair.
Yeah, because I think the run defense is so much more important in the slot. And that's a concern for me. So I think you kind of would have to lower him a tier that way.
Yeah.
Kapil asking about JC playing the slot. That is something he's done briefly. The Chargers did put him there a few times in practice and training camp. I don't think it would be a full-time thing though, by any means, because JC's not like a quality run defender either. So really Mike Davis is their best run defending corner at this point, which is crazy to think about from where he was back in 2019 and 2020.
Yeah, I think his missed tackle rate just dropped significantly the last year. Like, everything came together for him. JC could be the slot guy if they want him to follow a certain player. I think I don't think he's a slot guy by definition, but I think he's the guy that follows a guy into the slot, and then he's the slot guy.
So like when they play the Raiders, like, he'll follow Davante into the slot if he's healthy, obviously.
Yeah,
because that's the difference here between all these corners, right? Like, I don't think they never really had Davis follow last year. Like, Tyreek was really the only guy he went into the slot for.
Yeah.
Just because I think there's that, positive
Callahan
history.
was hurt too.
Yeah, Callahan was hurt that game as well. So, JC, I feel like it's a little dicier, but at minimum, he's an average starter with upside.
Yeah, I think that's a fine place to put him because, the upside is leads the league in interceptions. Yeah. In theory, the upside's higher than anybody else here, but we need to see him be on the field. So, yeah, I think average starter with upside is fine. I think he can clearly go well above that. And I think his floor is high if he comes back healthy. Like, I think his floor should be solid. I think this is fair. Average starter with upside seems fair.
Yeah, I need to see him play. Like, great news, like we talked about today, to start the show. But until we see him actually like get back on the field, I think this is probably where we have to put him.
And then Jaw Taylor, average starter.
Yeah, average starter feels right. I think the upside is that he moves up to average starter with upside. I don't think that's enough for me to put him there already.
Yeah, that's fine. And he was, after JC, Jaw Taylor was crushing camp. One of the 3-4 best players, definitely one of the 3 best players on defense. So excited, man. I never would have thought Jaw Taylor year 2 over, like even last year, just taking starter snaps, but in year 2, taking the slot corner, that's awesome. You got 3 more years of this guy.
Yeah. And Jaw Taylor has been making an impact at OTAs too. So I agree with Liam in the chat. If JC is healthy, this corner room is fantastic. The safety room, which is much less so. People were debating earlier in the chat, like, which is the weakest position group here. It's absolutely the safety room, in my opinion. So again, I kind of want to leave Derwin for last here. So Alohi, I think we could put at worst an average starter, but I kind of would put make an argument that he would be an average starter with upside, because we've seen how productive he can be around the football with turnovers and stuff like that. Run defense is generally very, very fantastic. So I would put him in the average starter with upside tier, but what about you?
I will do that as well based on projection, not based on previous play as much. I do think he's kind of almost by definition so far been an average starter last year, but he continues to ascend. So I do think average starter with upside is fair. Is he the fastest guy? No. Like, is he the most athletic guy? No. But I think average starter with upside is fair, because there are moments where, he is an average starter. And then there's moments where he's covering Tyreek Hill down the field. And it's beautiful. So I think that upside is there.
Yeah, I agree. Lane and JT Woods probably have to be put in the role player backup category. If they were like a backup with upside category, I think we could put JT there. But we talked about for the last few weeks, we literally did not see him at all last year. So we don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot about Dean Leonard.
Yeah, I totally forgot too. Yeah. Oops. Anyway.
So yeah, like JT definitely feels like a make or break season, honestly. So we got to see some improvement this year.
All right, last one, Derwin James. We have nobody in All Pro right now.
Yes. So Derwin was a Pro Bowler last year. He wasn't an All Pro though, right? Or was he?
No, I think he got like 1 vote or something, but that was it.
That's right, because they had like Minka Fitzpatrick and Hufanga were the first team I remember. I guess I should look this up. 22, that'd be
Buda Baker and somebody. Who is the other safety? Chat, help us out.
I'm looking on NFL.com. First team safeties were Minka Fitzpatrick and Talanoa Hufanga. Second team safeties. Oh, this says Derwin did make it.
Oh, I thought he just had.
Yeah, I thought he was just a Pro Bowler last year.
What happened? I swear he had 1 vote in this category last year.
I thought he was just a Pro Bowler last year. Yeah, Pro Football Reference only has him as a Pro Bowler.
Welp.
I guess they only have a thing designated as. Okay, so he was second team All Pro. Okay, now I see. Okay. So Derwin James has a first team All Pro to his name as a rookie, which is crazy, and then second team All Pro last year. Okay, because I always look at Pro Football Reference and I only see like the star next to his name. I never see the plus. So they don't have a plus designation for a second team. So that's just kind of been my confusion there.
Gotcha.
I think Derwin James is clearly an All-Pro, man. I think he should be, talked about as at worst like the second best safety in the league. Like I think Minka Fitzpatrick and him just kind of jockey for that first and second spot.
Sure.
Talanoa Hufanga last year was kind of a flash in the pan, just had like an epic season. So I understand why he was the choice, but there's this like talk on Chargers social media that Derwin's like not worth the contract, which I've never understood, or that like the Chargers defense was better without him when he was injured last year. Like I don't understand how you can watch the Chargers and think they're better without Derwin James. Like, he is such a rare player in this league. I think best player on the defense by far. Somebody that I feel comfortable with on a week in and weekend basis of being an impact player. You know, we saw him cover DeAndre Hopkins one-on-one. He can cover Travis Kelce. He can be an edge rusher for them, as we saw against the 49ers and Falcons. He was like their second best edge rusher in those games.
Yeah.
So I think Derwin's pretty clearly an all-pro. We got to get my guy some help, though, because, you know, we're talking about 3 tiers between him and the next safety. So need some help for Derwin, but he's very clearly an all-pro player.
Yeah, I agree. All-pro player, fine by me. If he's not first team, fine. But I think he hovers in that range. I can't name, 4 other safeties that are better than him. Yeah, he's fantastic. It seems to me, unless it's Joey Bosa, it's like, okay, defense stinks. Oh God, here we go. Oh, Derwin James did something awesome. Great. Turnover. Thank goodness. There's just so many moments last year where it's like, oh, okay, yeah, like Derwin James is still that guy. Yeah. I feel like he makes fewer of the impact plays, I guess, like on a broadcast, where when you're watching, it's like, wow, look at that tackle for a loss. And, like, I don't think he maybe has as many of those sort of like the fan to watch during a game, but the roles that he plays and what he does otherwise, I think are, show his value and what he can do. Again, edge rusher, blitz from the A gap, slot corner, outside corner, like whatever. Like, he can do whatever you need him to do.
Yeah, and Derek Ansley's talking about him taking more snaps in the slot this year, which I think is super, super fun. Did you say that's hot?
Yeah.
I think, like, I can understand why some people would think, like, oh, like, the defense might be a little too complicated with him moving around. Like, I think in an ideal world, like, I don't want Derwin playing back. I don't want him being in a too high shell safety. I want him around the football more.
Yeah.
And so that's why I want, like, another safety in this room that I can trust, because then Derwin can just be around the box, be around the line of scrimmage. And I think that's, like, where you'd really start to see him. It sounds so weird to say, like, you see his game unlocked because he's a 2-time all-pro safety.
Yeah.
But I think you want him around the line of scrimmage as much as possible and just causing havoc. And so I wish there were another safety that we could trust behind him, because, him around the football is just so much fun.
Yeah.
He can be a coverage player for them too. Like we talked about, when he got that interception against DeAndre Hopkins, basically saving that game, which is really bad. Covering Travis Kelce is definitely an uphill battle, but he's like the only guy in the league who can really handle him one-on-one, on a decent basis. So Derwin's so good. He's the heartbeat of the defense. He's probably the face of the franchise, in terms of like how they market the team. So Derwin, I think, is easily the most important player on defense.
Yeah, and I would say Brandon Staley's favorite player on the team.
I would agree with that.
Herbert saves his ass, but definitely favorite player on the team.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I like how Kellen Moore the other day, like in the mic'd up session, he's like, that fucker Derwin James is so smart.
Yeah, Derwin's smart. He's really smart. He was just talking about the way I don't know exactly what the play was, but he wouldn't take the bait on whatever it was, and he would know that this was coming. So yeah, that's fun to hear.
Yeah, and NFL is pointing out too, like, the defense looked better in those games because they were playing shit offenses. Like, we're talking about the Nick Foles led Colts offense without Derwin James. Like, let's calm down a tad.
Yeah, it's interesting discourse around the last third of the season where it's like, look at the defense resurging. And I sat there, we were like, nope. Nope. And I hated it that you see against the Jaguars, because in the first half, everyone's like, wow, well, maybe the defense is really good. Anyway, the defense, the offenses that they played. I mean, Baker Mayfield Rams, Nick Foles Colts. I mean, the game against the Dolphins was great. Don't get me wrong.
That was the one where it was like, that was the game that made me think, like, okay, like, the defense can maybe really be something for them.
Yeah.
But I wasn't like putting a ton of stock in those Colts and Rams games at all.
Yeah. And then Tannehill hurt his ankle the third play of the game.
Right.
It's Tannehill in general.
They literally could not throw the football for a quarter and a half while Tannehill was injured.
Yeah, and they still almost won.
They had a great battle against Derrick Henry, I will say.
They did. Yeah.
But it wasn't like they were playing, vintage Titans by any means.
No.
So at some point we'll have like a real conversation of like really what are expectations for this defense.
Mm-hmm.
And I think once we get to training camp, we'll be able to see like who is really kind of, healthy and whatnot, how they're looking against, the Saints in practice will help us a lot too, even though the Saints are not like an elite offense by any means, but yeah. All right. Tyler, any final thoughts on the tiers here?
Nope. I went into this thinking that there'd be a bigger gap between some of these, all Pro Bowl contender versus the rest of the roster.
Yeah.
But I think when you really look at it, yeah, the Chargers do have more talent, I think, than I gave them credit for a couple days ago.
Yeah, I would say I feel better about the depth on offense than I do the depth on defense.
Oh, that is for sure.
Like 100%, because you have guys like Josh Palmer, you have guys like, Jordan McFadden's a rookie, right? But we feel good about him.
Mm-hmm.
You have Donald Parham. Like the depth difference is huge, but like star talent on both sides, I think there's plenty of star talent on offense and defense.
Yeah.
What? Interesting take.
What are we looking at?
Oh, I misread one of the takes in the chat. That's okay. That's my bad. So yeah, this has been fun. I hope you guys have enjoyed these last two episodes, because I love seeing like really where these rosters stack up. We always talk about like where the Chargers have a great roster. They have a lot of talent, but like categorizing them like this, I think is very important. And then being able to verify the depth too. So yeah, it was a fun one. All right, so our next episode is obviously going to be on the Chargers feed. That's going to be on Tuesday. We're going to be talking about some free agency rumors this late in the cycle. So should be fun one, talking about Mr. DeAndre Hopkins, who we mentioned a couple times today, Dalvin Cook, and some other ones that could be out there as potential targets for the Chargers at this point in the season. So stay tuned for that one. And then we'll be back with our regular show on Thursday after that. So thanks so much for tuning in. As always, if you are listening, make sure to leave us a rating or a review. Really appreciate that positive feedback there as well. That's it for today. As always, bolt up.